Hi, it's Jack from CodeWiz. Today, I'm going to show you the inner workings of mobile and desktop operating systems. The job of the OS is to let the user interact with and run programs on their computer. OSs also provide a bridge between the hardware in a computer and the software on a computer. They let users take advantage of their hardware in an easy-to-use manner. Most operating systems use a GUI, or Graphical User Interface. This is an interface where the primary method of interaction is through pointers, like a mouse cursor, and icons. The base of any OS is its kernel. The kernel is the core program that enables the OS to run. It gives instructions to the CPU, handles peripherals like mice and keyboards, and allocates system memory, or RAM. The kernel works closely with all of the drivers for hardware in your system as well. The drivers are bits of code that tell the OS and other software how to interact with the component. An example of this is a video game passing instructions to a graphics card. The graphics card driver tells the game what functions or pieces of code to run for specific tasks to be done on the graphics card. Doing this many millions of times a second is what lets you run and display the game. There are also drivers for components you plug into a computer, like flash drives. They tell the computer how to read and interact with the data that's stored there. Another example is drivers for a keyboard, telling the computer which keys correspond to which letter. OSs use all of this to run programs and code on a system. You may know that hardware is the components of your computer, and software is what runs on the hardware. This means that any OS is considered software. However, there's also something called firmware. Firmware fills the gap between hardware and software. It's located on a chip that's stored on a device's motherboard. Its job is to initialize and perform basic tasks with the hardware. Then, the operating system can load in. In some devices where there's no operating system present, like a disk drive or a network router, these devices will use their basic firmware as their operating system. OSs, or operating systems, can be placed into two different classes, desktop and mobile. Desktop operating systems are what computers like laptops and desktop towers run. Mobile operating systems are housed on tablets or phones. Desktop and mobile OSs are different in many ways, but perhaps the most notable is the type of CPU that they use. For the most part, desktop operating systems run on Intel or AMD CPUs using the x86 architecture. It was first used in 1978 when Intel released their 8086 processor and continues to be incredibly common today. Mobile operating systems run on CPUs using ARM, which is a more power-efficient architecture debuted in 1985. This makes it ideal for portable devices like phones, where battery life is paramount. Recently, Apple announced that they will be switching to ARM on all of their Mac computers later this year, ending their use of Intel x86 processors. Desktop operating systems run on laptops, desktop computers, all-in-ones, and some tablets. They're program-based, and applications can be downloaded from anywhere on the internet. Mobile operating systems run on phones and some tablets. They're app-based, and almost all apps must be downloaded from the OS's native marketplace, like the App Store or Google Play Store. Contrary to what some people think, phones and tablets have very similar hardware to desktops. However, instead of having many individual components, like RAM, the CPU, and the graphics card, there's one SoC, or system on a chip, which contains those components on one chip for use in small devices. Let's start with desktop operating systems. Windows is by far the most popular, with an incredible 87.82% market share as of June 2020. It's Microsoft's operating system, and the most recent and most popular version is Windows 10. It's so popular mostly because of its dominance in pre-built desktops and laptops where it's already installed from the factory, and because of its massive program base. The current main editions of Windows 10 are Home, Pro, Education, and Enterprise. Home and Pro are both more than suitable for standard computer use. Copies of Windows 10 from Microsoft range from $100 to $150, which leads some people to use it unlicensed. macOS is the second most popular desktop operating system, with 9.42% market share as of June 2020. It's shipped with every Mac product and cannot legally be put on anything else. The latest released version of macOS is macOS Catalina. However, macOS Big Sur was recently announced and it will likely be released in late 2020. A popular operating system among tinkerers and programmers is Linux, which has a 2.18% market share as of June 2020. It's structured very differently than Windows and Mac OS, and it's not made by one company. Instead, individuals and corporations have created Linux distros, or distributions, that are based on the Linux kernel. Some of these are based on others, like Ubuntu being based on Debian. Most editions of Linux are actually free, with more and more Windows-only programs being available on Linux every day. Now, let's move on to mobile operating systems. iOS and iPadOS are Apple's two major mobile OSs, with the former running on iPhones and the latter running on iPads. Together, they have 28.79% market share as of July 2020. Both of these OSs are tightly integrated with macOS and the Apple ecosystem of products like the Apple Watch. Apple's mobile OSs ship with every mobile device that they sell, from the factory. The latest release is version 13, with the version 14 beta available. Its general simplicity is a major pro. Android is Google's mobile OS and is very popular at 70.61% market share as of June 2020. It runs on phones and tablets from various companies like Google, Samsung, LG, and others, which is why it's so popular. It's also remarkably easy to develop for compared to iOS. Its larger app base and greater customizability draws many users in. The latest release is Android 11. Here's a quick recap of what I've gone over today. OS stands for Operating System, and it's what lets you control your computer. It runs on a kernel, which executes basic tasks. Desktop and mobile operating systems have some key differences, but they both achieve the same goal in the end. I hope you learned something in this video. If you liked it, make sure to hit like, and I'll see you next time on CodeWiz.